For about 150 years, there was this unspoken rule in North American energy. Canadian oil flows south. Simple. It was a comfortable, predictable setup that gave the United States cheap resources and left Canada with, well, a single dominant customer. But that era? It's over. Today we're breaking down a single deal that didn't just question that 150-year-old assumption, it completely blew it up. Okay, let's dive into the Calgary Accord, a deal that is rewiring Canada's entire energy future and redrawing the global power map.
So picture this, a cold morning in Calgary. Something pretty historic happens. Now, this wasn't some dramatic headline-grabbing summit. It was just a quiet signing ceremony between the Prime Minister and the Premier of Alberta. But the piece of paper they signed kicked off a chain of events that sent shockwaves from Washington all the way to Tokyo. This was the moment Canada decided it was done with dependency and ready for real sovereignty.
And this quote just nails the sheer scale of the moment, doesn't it? It wasn't about angry speeches or political threats. Nope. It was a surgical, strategic play. The Calgary Accord is basically a declaration that Canada will no longer sell its most valuable resource at a permanent discount for its southern neighbor. Instead, it's going to be treated as a strategic national asset, sold on the global market to whoever pays the most. And that new priority customer? Yeah, only the fastest growing economies in the entire world.
I mean, you can see the huge shift right here. For decades, the old reality was completely locked in. Canadian heavy oil flowed almost entirely south, straight to specialized U.S. refineries. And in return, Canada just accepted a lower price. We're talking $15 to $30 per barrel less than the world price. Washington held all the cards. But the new reality? It flips the whole board. The oil now flows west, directly to Asia. Prices aren't set by one buyer anymore. They're set by global competition. And the most important part? Ottawa goes from a position of dependency to one of real economic strength, with options it has never, ever had before.
So the big question is, how on earth did they pull this off? Well, the Accord is this brilliant piece of negotiation, built on three main pillars that tackle infrastructure, policy, and technology. So let's break down each one to see how this deal was engineered not just to work, but to be almost impossible to stop.
The first and, most solid pillar is the hardware itself. You can't sell oil to Asia if you can't get it there. For years, this has been the single biggest roadblock, just bogged down in regulatory nightmares and political fights. The Calgary Accord went right at this, head on, with a commitment that sent a jolt through the entire energy industry.
Let's look at these specifics here, because they're huge. We are not talking about some minor expansion. We're talking about a brand new pipeline carrying at least 1 million barrels a day. The timeline is just unheard of. A final decision in 8 months, not 10 years. And to get rid of the biggest roadblock, the deal puts the northern BC tanker ban, which everyone thought was untouchable, on the negotiating table. And this is crucial. This is all built in addition to the existing Trans Mountain expansion. Canada isn't swapping customers, it's adding new ones.
Of course, building a pipeline isn't just about steel and construction. It is all about political will. The second pillar of the Accord is a masterful political trade-off, a grand bargain that let both the federal government and the province of Alberta claim a massive victory. Honestly, this is where the real genius of the deal is.
So here's what each side walked away with. Ottawa got Alberta to commit to cutting emissions and to a high industrial carbon price. It kept federal oversight and, maybe most importantly, got to present a united front to the world. And in return, Alberta got the crown jewels, a guaranteed pipeline to the coast, an exemption from federal electricity rules that could have crushed its grid, and the power to manage its own carbon pricing timeline. This wasn't Ottawa just imposing its will, it was federalism actually working.
Now, the third pillar is the most forward-looking one. This isn't just about selling the resources we have today, it's about building the energy systems of tomorrow. The Accord cleverly ties the pipeline directly to cutting-edge tech, creating a powerful new brand for Canadian energy on the world stage.
The strategy here is just brilliant. The pipeline simply cannot be built unless the world's biggest carbon capture project is built right alongside it. Now, this move is about more than just the environment. It's a marketing game changer. Think about it. When buyers in Japan or South Korea have to choose, which oil are they going to pick? The high-carbon stuff from the Persian Gulf or the lower-carbon product from a stable democracy? Now, critics will argue, and rightly so, that any fossil fuel expansion has environmental risks. But Canada is positioning its oil as the responsible choice in a very complicated world.
Look, A plan this ambitious is totally useless if it can just be ripped apart by politics. So a huge part of the Calgary Accord was the political strategy behind it. The deal was designed from the very beginning to neutralize its critics, bring potential enemies into the tent, and build a coalition so big and powerful that it would be, well, politically bulletproof.
The first and most important piece of the puzzle was Alberta. By negotiating directly with Premier Danielle Smith and giving her province what it wanted, that regulatory certainty, and a path to the coast, the federal government locked in its most crucial ally. This quote really says it all. It flipped the whole story from one of Western alienation to one of partnership, basically putting an end to all that separatist talk that pops up whenever Alberta feels ignored.
Next up, the official opposition. And what's really interesting about this quote from conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is what he doesn't say. He's not attacking the pipeline. He's not against selling to Asia. He can't. His base would go crazy. So instead, he's stuck complaining about the process and the speed. It's the classic move from a politician who knows the deal is popular, but still has to find something to criticize.
And this shows you the tough spot the NDP was in. The party was totally caught. On one side, you've got its environmental base, and supporters in BC who are dead set against any new pipeline. On the other, you have the union workers, who want the jobs this thing will create. The result? A statement that criticizes the process but doesn't actually promise to kill the deal. It just reveals a party that's divided and can't really put up a strong fight.
But maybe the most powerful political move of all was how they dealt with the strongest potential opposition, First Nations. See, the Accord has a revolutionary idea baked right in. Any new pipeline has to offer Indigenous groups equity ownership, a real share of the profits. This isn't just about consultation anymore, it's about co-ownership, and that completely changes the conversation. I mean, how can you call a project colonial when the First Nations whose land it crosses are actual owners and beneficiaries?
But listen, if you think this is all just about a pipeline, you are missing the true ambition of the Calgary Accord. Tucked away inside this agreement is a part that reveals the real long game. This is about using today's resource wealth to build the infrastructure for the next massive economic boom, artificial intelligence.
That oil pipeline is really just the means to an end. The ultimate goal is to lock in Canada's spot as a leader in the 21st century digital economy, and that needs one thing more than anything else: huge amounts of stable, emissions-free power. And the Accord lays out a direct path to getting it.
So here's how it works. The Accord calls for a joint nuclear strategy by 2027. Why? Because while natural gas can power the oil sands, only nuclear can provide that 24/7, zero-emission electricity that AI data centers desperately need. This whole strategy is designed to attract the hyperscalers, the tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and position Canada as the one place in the world where the future of AI is powered by Canadian atoms.
Now, a move this big doesn't happen in a vacuum. By declaring its energy independence, Canada has fundamentally changed its relationship with the United States. It's created massive geopolitical and economic ripple effects. A new power map is literally being drawn right now. And this number, it is just staggering. Once that West Coast pipeline is running, Canadian producers can finally sell their oil at the global price, not the discounted Canadian price. Industry analysts figure this alone could add $20 to $30 billion in revenue to the Canadian economy every single year. That's money that, for decades, was basically a subsidy to American refineries. Not anymore.
You know, the most telling reaction has actually been the lack of one. No angry tweets, no threats of tariffs, just quiet. A stunned recognition in Washington that a 150-year-old economic advantage has just vanished. Overnight, they assumed they'd have permanent access to cheap Canadian resources, and they were dead wrong. The era of cheap Canadian energy flowing south is over.
So what does all this mean? What's the real takeaway from this massive strategic shift? Well, the Calgary Accord is more than just an energy deal. It's a practical lesson in what national sovereignty actually looks like in the 21st century.
And this final thought just brings it all together, doesn't it? True independence isn't built on rhetoric or waving a flag. It's built with concrete and steel. It's built with pipelines and carbon capture plants and nuclear reactors. It's about creating real options, having more than one customer for your product, and taking control of your own economic destiny.
In the end, the Calgary Accord boils down to this single, powerful question. For decades, Canadian energy policy was all about asking Washington for permission to build a pipeline, permission for market access. This accord marks the moment Canada stopped asking and just started building. And the consequences of that decision, they're only just beginning to unfold.